Alright, so my next project is that space right there. I'm going to try to make this counter space usable whenever we have guests over. We do this thing where we have church at our house and there'll be like 30 or 40 people and they'll be getting food from the counters and everything, but it would be nice to have all of this space be usable space. So I'm going to try to use some scrap wood that I have in the back to build something that can be usable space for that. And then also I'm going to try to build like a coffee table or something that goes in between these two chairs that I have here in the living room. So let's see if I can build something. Typically these things cost like, I don't know, everything feels like 75 to 100 bucks. And so I've got a ton of scrap wood in the garage, and I'm going to try to sand stuff, stain it, and build it so that way it works for a little coffee table. I've got a bunch of this wood that I've picked up from a store that was closing. Some of these things are going to be planter boxes that I'm going to use for the backyard, but let's see what I can make out of it. Some important general things to do first. I was just out in the garage, but I just need to get some measurements. First is going to be the width of this counter unit, and then also the height of this little coffee table. So as soon as I get those measurements, then I'll have the basics for what I need, and then I'll start building. And again, we'll just kind of hyperlapse this so you can see what the vibe is, but it's going right in between these two. I'm probably gonna have it just like an inch under the arm height, and we'll see what we can do. Because again, these coffee tables are generally 100 bucks. Everything's so expensive. So hopefully I can take this scrap wood and make something out of it. Now I immediately see a decision I'm gonna need to make. I don't know if you can see right here, but this is damaged. Again, I just got this from a store that was closing down. They had a bunch of shelving units and displays. And there was really some good wood, but some of it's a little bit messed up. So I'm just gonna use this portion. My coffee table only needs to be about 2 feet wide. So this will be just an offcut. But it's just kind of how you work with what you got. And then this one, since it looks good, decent on both sides, I'm gonna sand it down. I'll use this for that cover over the stove. This moment might seem random, but it's not. I've been waiting to build this chair. Finally got all the parts I need to do it. It is kind of an amalgamation of multiple chair pieces. This base, this thing comes from like a big office chair, so it's got way more than it needs in terms of pitch and height, but I'm excited to complete this. I'm gonna do this real fast, then I'll get back to it. Just like that, this Frankenstein chair is finished, and it's got a little bit of a forward lean, and it's going to work great as my shop chair. So that's that, one thing at a time. Now back to it. So one thing to be sure to do is always have something over your eyes when you're using a table saw. I've got my glasses on, safety goggles as well. I have a bunch of those. Wear something because stuff will spit out and you don't want to find out. And then also these feeds, especially when the pieces get really small, where you're pushing it through with this as opposed to your hands. For big pieces like that, I use my hands because I'm a good distance away from the blade, but you don't want to find out. So I recommend also getting 3 or 4 or 5 of these because anytime you have one, just like anything, you end up losing it and needing it and then making a snap decision. I'll just do it anyway. So I like to have multiple on hand, just in case I lose one, I can find another one. So anyways, that's something that you want to be sure to do. I'm gonna get back to it. Right, so all the pieces are cut for this, and I went inside and made sure it all fit. These are the side pieces here. This is actually upside down, technically. It's supposed to go over the stove, so this will be flipped over when it's on the stove. And then this piece right here is going to come on the inside. I'm going to pre-drill all of this. Anytime you have, especially old wood that's really dry, and you don't pre-drill it, it will for sure split. I like to pre-drill anyways, but I'm going to glue it, and then I'll put the screws in. And then after that, I'm going to take my router, and I'm going to round over these edges. Anytime you have like a really sharp 90-degree cut, a lot of times this stuff will crack and break because it's just too sharp of an edge, especially on older wood. So I do like to round the edges just a little bit, and that helps protect it in the long run. And then I will sand the whole thing down, then I will stain it and show you what it looks like. So essentially, all this is a box that goes over your stove, so that way you have more stove space. So almost there. Alright, so now I have to get into the sanding phase. I was going to put this piece on, but I'm realizing it's going to cover a piece that I need to sand and then stain. And so what I need to do is use this multi-tool, which is awesome. It's great for undercutting doors and getting into places with trim. It's great for cutting pipes, but it's also great for getting into the seams here. And I also use this sander as well. And I'm going to get this whole thing prepped and ready, and then I'll put it together, and the last thing I'll do is stain it, so it is getting close. Show you where this is at. So it is essentially built, and I used the router and got the edges nice and round, and then I filled in some of the holes that I used to put the screws in with this wood filler. It's this right here, this plastic wood. It works really great. And so once this dries, I'll sand everything down again and sand it down even further, get some more of these nicks out of this wood as much as I can. Yeah, this is old, cheap wood, but it'll work for my purposes. And then I'll stain it, and I'll put it inside the house and show you how we're going to use it to cover the stove for moments where we're trying to get just a little bit more counter space. But for now, I'm going to start working on this tabletop. I switched out the bit. I want a different curve around this table. It is going to have a shelf underneath it, and then it's going to have just two legs. I have to cut these legs down, so that way this thing stands a little bit shy of 2 feet high, and then with some of the excess, I'm going to use it to put a little mini shelf in between it. So very simple build, very simple project. So as you can see, I used two different bits. This is the underside, so this kind of cuts underneath it, and then I rounded off the top, so that way it just kind of has a little bit of shape here. Very simple thing to use with your trim router. So now I got to sand it a little bit more, and then I'll build the legs and the shelf, the lower shelf, and that'll be that. Table, just the general shape of this coffee table. I gotta fill it in with that wood putty, but essentially It's got that little shelf down below. We had to square it off and level it off, and then I brought it inside to make sure that it was the right height and it looked good. Yeah, I'll fill it, I'll let it dry, then I'll sand it again, and then I'll stain it. And this is a cheap way to build something that might cost maybe $100. I'm sure in the stores it's built with maybe better quality, but I like it when it's something that I can build and provide for my family. So we're almost there with this as well. All right, so the pieces are pretty much where they're gonna end up at. I still have to sand everything down once this plastic wood putty dries. I'll sand it, and then after I sand it and sand the other one really good, then we'll be moving on to the staining phase. So in the meantime, I gotta get my workspace back in order. So let me tidy this up, and then the last thing I'll do is sand and then stain, and I'll set them in the house and show you what it looks like. All right, so the pieces are almost done. Got them both laid out here on top of this table with this masking film, and now I'm going to stain it. I've got a two-step process. Sometimes people will do this in one step. I've seen some combinations where it's both a stain and a polyurethane finish in one thing. I don't like to do that because if you ever want to put on another coat, you have to sand it down. So I like to stain first 2 or 3 times, and then finally add the polyurethane at the end. And so for the staining process, all you really need is like a rag or a t-shirt or something, and anything really works for that process. And then for the final finish coat, this polyurethane, you can't use a rag, you have to use something like this. This is a nylon polyester brush that's specifically geared for the final application. Not all brushes are equal, like many things. Not all brushes are equal, and this one is specifically used for this kind of a finish. And so I will put on these gloves, make sure to do that, and then I've cut out a little bit of this rag, and I'll apply this. I also have, unfortunately, there's a seam that I wanted to have in here, and I have to, so I grabbed my wife's butter knife. But I use this sometimes just to get inside of really tight spaces, and I wish I would have not put this on first and stained all of this before, but here we are. So this is my solution, to go into the kitchen and grab this, and don't tell my wife. Here is the table, just some scrap wood and a little bit of stain, and we think it looks good. Here we have the stove top to give us a little bit more counter space. We're actually getting set up because folks from our church are going to be coming over in a little bit, and it just helps us to be able to have guests and lay out food over here as opposed to having everyone crowd around in here. We stage most things on this counter, but anyways, it's simple. It is essentially a box that goes over the stove. We made it with scrap wood, stained it, and we're happy with it. Thanks for watching.